slow burn trope, the enemies to lovers trope. Like these are tropes where like I will eat it up. Give me more, keep me fed. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Fangirl Feels. My name is Olivia.
My name's Tanya.
We're the podcast where we give an emotional analysis on all the books, movies, shows, all the content that gives us all the feelings. Although lately we've been focusing on books because of that darn writer strike. But we like books, like we said. And today, speaking of books, we were going to talk about our... Well, Tanya, why don't you tell us what we're going to talk about? Your topic.
Well, actually, Olivia, thank you for asking your followers on Instagram what we should talk about in terms of book talk. And so someone offered up this subject. I forget who, but thank you. They said we should talk about book tropes we love to hate. We love that subject. So we went ahead and looked up a bunch of book tropes that we both love to hate, and we have some examples of books within those specific tropes.
We love it. Love to hate things. No, that's not true. We're not haters. The internet loves that. The internet loves people that hate things. And I don't want to be defined by the things that I hate. But I have tropes that I dislike for sure. So we'll talk about them. It'll be great.
Before we do that, we have some engagement that we've received from people who listen to our podcast.
Our fandom feedback.
Fandom feedback. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Here we go. Just a couple. This was a good one. We, on our episode about Fourth Wing, go ahead and listen to that. That one was, I thought, really funny. Like, it was just, we were reviewing the book, but also it was funny. But we asked listeners, which romantasy book would you like us to review in a future episode? And the winners, from just a whopping 4 people, was... For 2 people voted for Sarah J. Maas. I was one of those people. It's just on our list of books that we are probably going to cover. And then
we have to at this point. We have to.
We've talked about it so much. We have to.
Yeah, we have to.
The Cruel Prince. Our friend Haley has read this and gave us mixed reviews for it. But so I don't know if we'll read it, but it was on there and someone voted for it. And then Fireborn. Olivia has started it. I'm very early on in it, like literally chapter 1. I'm just getting through other books I have in Libby first. But that is probably one we will review in the future.
I wouldn't describe Fireborn as a romantasy, but I'm happy to talk about it. Yeah, this is definitely not a romantasy. This is a romance or a fantasy with romance, but it's not a romantasy by any means. In fact, like I'm 70% of the way through now. I'm taking it really slow. And the romance is like very, very chill. Like it's like very background. It's great. I love it, but it's definitely not a romantasy, I think. But we can discuss it. I'm happy to.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. Everyone stay tuned. We will talk about these books later.
Indeed. And I know that the Brothers Hawthorne has officially come out, and I saw that you posted that you got it on Libby. So that's on our list. I tried to borrow it on Libby today and I couldn't. I don't know why. It was freaking out on me. So I'll try again. We'll have to talk about that book.
Yes. I've been dying to read this one. I have a couple books that I start like a couple books and then I get through some quicker. I'm actually currently reading or listening to our good friends at the Rough Draft podcast, Neelam and Natasha, told me to read, followers, not me specifically, sorry, told their followers to listen to The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, and it's a brown author who talks about a brown witch, which is also me. So yay!
both are me. That's cool. I've never heard that. I gotta listen to that podcast. They are our friends. Your friends. I don't know them, but your friend is my friend. It's
there
like
we go.
Of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. No, the friend of my friend is my friend.
Is my friend. What is that like mathematical whatever? You know what? Too deep already.
The transient property.
There we go. Yes. Transitive, transience.
Transient. I don't know. We don't know math on this podcast.
That'll be our quiz, our poll.
Is it the transcendent?
The transatlantic property.
The transatlantic property. That's the one.
I say, my dear. Transatlantic accent.
I always thought that accent was weird.
It's a little strange.
It's a little I can't even do it. You did it pretty well, actually.
Thank you, my dear Olivia.
You're really good at it, actually. That's awesome.
I Googled this. I love learning about accents. I've Googled this accent too many times. That's probably why.
You got it. That makes it's clear. You know what you're doing. That's so funny. Should do that in your comedy skit.
Oh
Nice
yeah.
Atlantic accent.
I'll try
Yeah.
and bring out accents. I have a comedy show tonight where I'm actually talking about idioms.
Oh,
It's
that's a good
based
one.
on our discussions about idioms. And it was about this one time. And I can tell you because by the time this drops, I will have done the performance. But it's about how I didn't know what the idiom "don't lick a gift horse in the mouth" or "don't look a gift horse in the mouth." And that's the joke. I thought they said lick. It's look. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
Don't. What does that mean?
Exactly, right? Like I didn't know.
Child of immigrant problems. What does that mean?
Classic.
Yeah.
I first heard it at our previous job where we worked together, like because there were a lot of like people with southern accents, and I wonder if this is like a southern idiom. I don't know, but it means like when someone gifts you something, don't like pick it apart in front of them. Like be grateful for it. You know,
Okay.
don't like pick apart if you get a gift horse. Number one, how cool. Number two, don't look it in the mouth because the mouth was a way to like determine how old the horse was or something like that, or the health of it. So don't look a gift horse in the mouth. But I thought it was don't lick. And I was like, everyone.
Okay. I was just like, everyone, why are we licking?
Why is this related to anything
Why
I
are
do?
why are we doing this? Like, why is this I mean, why am I getting a horse as a gift? It's another whole thing.
How great though. Like, yeah, beyond like, I don't care what you do with the horse. Like, that's a pretty cool gift.
It is a nice gift, but it's also really expensive. Like, I can't manage that.
Yeah. This is like an unrelatable idiom. It's not, how can we use this with normal everyday people? So
No. Idioms are weird. That'd be cool though. Follow Totally Tanya on Instagram to check out her comedy specials and her comedy shows. Totally follow her. She's great.
Thank you. Totally.
Totally Tanya. What's the little like theme song?
There's no words.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, did I have one?
No, you just did like a little music.
Oh yeah.
Like, like I don't know how to do it.
Totally
Yeah, there you go.
But
There
that's
we
actually not the direction I went with. I got an intro made by someone on Fiverr and we went a totally different direction, but I do at some point. Maybe I'll switch it up like totally Tanya.
Totally Tanya.
Sorry.
I like Totally Tanya.
Thank you.
It's a good name.
Totally Tanya with 3 L's.
With 3 L's. That's okay. You can't even tell that there's 3 L's.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's good. You're smart. I meanwhile regret all of my the choices in my URLs. Viva with 2 V's and 2 A's.
25 V's and
25 V's and 35 A's. Like the worst. Again, 19-year-old me didn't know that would be an issue. But such is life. We make decisions.
Everyone follow VVIVAA, and then you have to say that 3 times fast.
You did it right. VVIVAA.
I've been practicing.
Yeah, good job. It's just Viva. Let this be known. It's just Viva. But I couldn't give Viva. So I put an extra V and an extra A, front and back. And here we are, regretting it to this day.
It's too late to change it. Whoever has the Viva, yeah. They're living life, you know.
They are. They're me. They're who I wish to be. And then I tried to change it to Viva Draws. This actually happened. So my TikTok is Viva Draws, but I tried to change my Instagram to Viva Draws one year and my engagement flopped. Instagram hated it. They were like, who are you? Who is this imposter? And they just like, it was the worst year. It affected my Instagram engagement for about a year. Even after I changed it back like 2 weeks later.
What?
It's like, oh my God. Yeah, it was the worst. So never change your Instagram names if you have a following, just so you know.
Good to know. Yeah, get that figured out early on.
Yeah, because you're sticking with it. Like it is yours forever. Yeah, it was the worst. I was like growing exponentially. And then I was like, I got to change Viva. Like I got to do it. And I changed it to Viva Draws and it was the worst decision I ever made. Had to go back.
Her life of all the regrets.
Every decision I've ever made in my life. That was the worst one. Terrible.
There was a time where in church she played a Christina Aguilera song on her phone. This is much worse. Changing her Instagram handle. Yeah.
Yeah, where I like disrupted the Lord's Prayer with I'm a genie in a bottle, baby.
If you wanna be with me.
Baby, there's a price to pay. I gotta ask my sister about that if she remembers, because that was funny. Good times. I loved that watch. Great watch. That was from our episode on celebrity relationships and parasocial relationships, if you haven't listened to it.
Very interesting.
Yes, if you want to hear that story.
Back to our regularly scheduled content. To start this episode, like we always do, I think it's important to contextualize things with history. So before we started, wanted to define definition of trope compared to genre. They're easily confused. Honestly, I think there's a lot of overlap, but from looking up the definition, a genre is a category of artistic composition, as in music or literature, characterized by similarities in form, style, and subject matter. So for example, an example of a genre would be like fantasy, right? But then there's subgenres of like high fantasy, low fantasy. But then what you get with tropes are essentially when an author uses a particular theme in their book. And this theme can span over genres. Although you may find that some do tend to stay within one or two genres. And I got this definition from a blog called Under the Covers book blog, and I thought it made sense. It clicked for me. And then I just wanted to give some historical context as well. So the word trope can be traced back to the 1530s, Shakespearean time, right? The word stems from the Latin word tropus, which means a figure of speech, which comes from the Greek word tropos, meaning something akin to a turn in rhetoric. Love some etymology.
To a turn, akin to a turn? What does that mean? Like turning? Like actually physically turning, or like taking a turn?
I wonder if there's like a miscommunication there, like mistranslation of like what that could mean. My guess would be like a trope is like there's points in like a story that you could highlight as like this is the trope. You know what I mean?
Oh, interesting.
I'm just guessing. I did want to give an example, like we mentioned in the 1530s during Shakespeare's time, Shakespeare was known for giving names to tropes. So he didn't necessarily invent the tropes that I'm about to mention, but he did popularize them, right? So if you think about star-crossed lovers, you hear about that all the time. It stems from Romeo and Juliet, but he didn't necessarily make that. And then a popular movie, one of the most popular movies of all time, was Titanic with Jack and Rose, their star-crossed lovers.
That makes sense. That's cool that he like named these. Good for him. We love to name a trope. We
love to do it.
Yeah. It's funny because like I didn't realize, I feel like tropes, TikTok has made tropes very much like, we all are aware of tropes. We know that they existed, even obviously pre-social media, that's proven. But I feel like TikTok has made discussing tropes or like identifying tropes the key selling factor to purchasing or not purchasing a book or like watching a movie or whatever. It's interesting. We've almost funneled down stories into their tropes at this point. And like we have our tropes that we like and we have our tropes that we don't like. And if this story has this trope, that's the selling point. I don't know if we did that before, which is interesting. I don't know. What do you think?
Yes, I saw an article just about this. One second, let me try to pull it up. About this very, very topic. The concept of tropes like became popular within TV in like 2004, right? Like we spanned from like the 1500s to like 2004, and I can only assume that was due to being able to like market and sell a TV show. And that's when there was like an onslaught of different types of tropes, specifically to TV that came out during that time.
That makes sense. So interesting. I feel like it used to be a bad thing, which like tropey, we do say tropey is bad sometimes, but I feel like previously, if your book followed too many tropes, it meant it was like cliche, and that's bad, which I think is still partially true. But now, like to that point, it's like now it's like a selling point. It's like, oh, you do this trope. If you did it well, then like I'm in. Like slow burn trope, the enemies to lovers trope. Like these are tropes where like I will eat it up. Give me more, keep me fed. Like if you have it in your book. So like I will read same books that like are all just like slightly different if they give me that but do it well. Like, yes, feed me.
Hard agree. Yeah. Which is a great segue to the tropes that we love to hate. So we'll go through this list and talk about books that we think relate to them, which we don't necessarily just hate these books, you know what I mean? But like they fit into these tropes. So the first one, a contentious one, the accidental pregnancy trope. What do we think about this one?
I hate it. Obviously. This one I never really encountered until Breaking Dawn. So like I wrote Breaking Dawn here. So that was like my first real experience with it. And I like hated it. Like in that moment, I was like, whatever, 16 years old. I think we've talked about this in our Twilight episode. When I'm reading Breaking Dawn with my friends, we're like in my parents' basement because like they stayed over at my friends, like at my parents' house that night because I was next to a Borders. Good times. And like my friend gets to that scene first, and I was like so mad to hear that like Bella got pregnant. It's just like it feels like a cop out. It feels, especially in the context of Breaking Dawn, it was like biologically impossible with what they've established in the world. It just feels it's a storyline that we just like don't need to experience if they're not. I don't know. It's just like it adds on like unnecessary drama. It's just not fulfilling as a trope, you know? It doesn't provide any fulfillment in the story.
It seems like an easy out or an easy way to create conflict in a way, right? In a story. And it predominantly affects women or people who identify as women, right?
I think there's also an element of like, I've heard this trope be criticized when it oftentimes like solves all the problems between the couples. Like, I think to your point, it causes problems. Like, right, it's an accidental pregnancy, but then it also somehow the pregnancy becomes the solution to whatever problem the couple might have, like after the baby's arrived. I've seen that a few times. Like, I mean, I think Breaking Dawn's another example of that. Like, suddenly Renesmee has solved everything. Like, Jacob is fine now. Edward and Bella are the best thing to ever, you know, they've never been happier. So, like, and she became a vampire because of it. So I think that can be bad. It's a lazy storytelling. And then also I think problematic to in the sense of, oh, this pregnancy can actually solve everything, which is not how life works. Surprise.
You still have underlying relationship issues.
Yes.
Get that figured out.
The baby. Love it. But yeah, that's a popular one to dislike. It's just not typically done well.
Yeah.
And unnecessary.
Next one, 99% miscommunication trope. I hate this one. I hate this one in every TV show, every movie, every book I read. I just think it's, again, poor writing. Like, I just think, like, we've listed some books here where I don't think it's 99% versus, like, in some of these it is. I think that's the issue. Like, I can understand if that happens sometimes in the book, that happens, right? That happens in life. But it being, like, the central, like, conflict point of a book, I think is just poor writing. So, like, for example, Normal People. I didn't read the book, but I watched the show, and it made me crazy that, like, one of the biggest fights the couple had was just a miscommunication. If they had just, like, turned around and talked, done. Book over. We're fine. Everyone's fine.
Indeed.
Yeah, and then Pride and Prejudice, which we'll talk about in a second. You have thoughts on that? A Court of Frost and Starlight, to be honest, Nesta, I think her main issue as a human was just not talking about her issues, so that makes sense. But yeah, if you want to talk about Pride and Prejudice.
So this was sad. Like when we looked up, we went through these tropes and we looked up books that we thought fell into these tropes, and Pride and Prejudice came up, and I was like, how dare Pride and Prejudice? How dare you say that Pride and Prejudice falls into this trope? But it does. And I actually do remember feeling a little bit upset by this, even like even like a little bit annoyed by it. Pride and Prejudice is a great book, one of my favorites, an amazing story. But I mean, I have no spoilers for Pride and Prejudice. If you haven't read or know Pride and Prejudice at this point, sorry, I can't help you. The book came out in 1700s. There's like multiple instances of that in this book where like Darcy just doesn't speak. Like he's just a quiet person. So there are many like assumptions that Elizabeth has about Darcy that he just like doesn't speak to. And then when he helps her sister with the like secret marriage and just doesn't, or like the whole, like there's just those moments. Like there's also an issue with Wickham, who almost eloped with Darcy's sister. And then Elizabeth thinks that like Wickham was the one at fault, or it was the one that was betrayed, but it was actually Darcy that was betrayed. And if Darcy just like explained what happened with Wickham, then like maybe it wouldn't be an issue. I think it works well in this story, but it is one of those things that like if they could have just had a conversation, this wouldn't be a problem. Like we wouldn't have a story. So I think to your point, like sometimes these things happen in real life and that's normal. And like you don't have to share everything with everyone. But yeah, point being, all that to say, it does fall into the miscommunication trope, which is interesting.
Yeah.
A thing.
Very interesting.
Yeah, a thing.
The next one, and I've actually heard that this is quite a common trope, the chosen one trope, which, for example, Harry Potter or Divergent books where the one person is the one to save them all. Frodo, I guess, you know. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on this? I think it's just overdone. I don't necessarily dislike it, but I just think it's overdone. We've seen it.
Yeah, I actually don't hate it at all. I think we all like to see the the character that like becomes something, you know, that like we all want to be that person who didn't think we could do anything but then gets chosen, you know. I think we all relate to that kind of story, so I don't hate this trope. Yeah, it's just overdone. It's true. And oftentimes these people tend to be like insanely overpowered and everything comes to them easily. Like I'm thinking of Violet from Fourth Wing, who I know we have her written down for another trope on this list, but she gets the powers that like no one has ever seen in like 3,000 years. Like really? And she gets two dragons instead of one dragon. What? Like everything special happens to her. That's where it gets a little bit kind of silly. You're like, okay, this is unrealistic.
That's really similar to Akatar too, where Farah gets all the powers from, you know what I mean? Like, why was she the one? Compared to like Harry Potter, at least was like an underdog who just like found his way into this mess. He didn't ask to be, which I think a lot of the chosen ones didn't either. But like, there's a difference in comparing the two.
Harry's story, like he's used this as example as the chosen one, but what I think works about him was it was Voldemort that actually created his own destiny that made Harry the chosen one. Like by him killing Lily, which then saved Harry, he fulfilled his own prophecy kind of in that way that made Harry this quote unquote chosen one. It wasn't like Harry just grew up and was like, actually, you're special. It was kind of thrust upon him in a way, like that he didn't as a child. So I think that makes that story more unique, even though he's one of the like more, you know, original examples of the chosen one trope. But I forgive him. I think his was done well. Harry Potter's just a well written book. We can dislike the author all we want, but the book itself, fantastic.
That's a good point. It's like the reason they were chosen is explained. I think that's it. Versus like divine intervention.
Just like, or just like randomness. Yeah, like exactly. I think that's great. Like Violet is just like, oh, you just happen to be this way. Where it's like Harry, we get it. It's cool to see that full circle moment. Or in Divergent, like Trish just like happens to be divergent, but I guess, and she happens to be 100% divergent. Everyone else might be like 40% or 20%, but no, she's 100%, and we have no idea why. Like why she's just special. Like yeah, that's not fun.
Next one, and I know we might have different thoughts on this one. The love triangle trope. I don't always hate this. I just think that sometimes it's overdone. I think sometimes it's unbelievable. So, for example, we talk about Summer I Turned Pretty. Belly has two handsome boys fighting over her. Two. Can't relate. And then Akatar, this happened with, well, several books. I think Throne of Glass, this happened a little bit. And then A Court of Thorns and Roses with Tamlin and Rhysand.
Yep. Those are some good. I mean, there's plenty of examples. I mean, like Twilight, The Infernal Devices. I know you haven't read those, but like Shadow and Bone. The love triangle trope. It's in almost every single book I've read at this point. It's just so prominent. I don't hate it, but I'm tired. I am tired of it. And yeah, to your point, in the Summer I Turned Pretty, it's like, I can't relate. I didn't turn 15 and suddenly all the boys loved me. Like that didn't happen. Sorry, I wish, but it didn't. Did not occur.
I'm still waiting for the Summer I Turned Pretty. When is it gonna happen?
We haven't gotten there yet. The summer's almost over, and I'm not.
We're in our 30s. Someone help us.
She turned pretty at 15. I'm still waiting at 30. Akatar, it's like more believable because you're in a magical world. That whole situation was interesting. I feel like fantasy love triangles are just better because you have like two fantastical men going after one woman. I hate if it's two women and one man. I don't watch that. I don't read that. But two men with one woman, that's fine. Like, that's okay. Not
Wait, you don't like two women in a love triangle with one man? Wait, why?
I don't like the like there's one man going after two women. Like or like two women love the same man. I don't like that. Essentially but if it's like it would be different if, how do I explain? If Bella was a man and Edward and Jacob were women, I feel like the book would fall. I would hate it. I wouldn't read it. But the fact that Bella is a girl and there's two men. I think we tend to just like that better. We like, as women, we want to read men go after a woman versus vice versa. I'm not going to read about women going after a man. You know what I mean?
No, but why? I'm just
Oh,
curious
you
why.
don't? You don't understand?
I'm trying to understand. No, I'm
It's like the
wondering the
difference
why
between-
behind this.
It's like the difference between The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. Like, if like a guy has like multiple women under his belt, that seems like sleazy to me. But in this case, it's like women. It doesn't feel as bad. I don't know. It doesn't have to be logical. It's just how it is.
I can't relate. I don't, but I think maybe you're describing heterosexuality. Maybe that's it. You just want to see, you know what I mean? Like you can understand if you're the girl having that feeling of like men pining for you. You know what I mean? Versus like if it's like one man, we can't put ourselves in the shoes of the man. You know what I mean? I think that's the difference.
I wouldn't even say it's about putting your shoes in like a man's shoes. It's just like, I think because of the way men present themselves in the world, I think it looks bad when a man is like playing multiple women. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it comes off as misogynistic, whereas the opposite, and oftentimes the way we write women, because we're sympathetic to it. Like, women often don't have power in these relationships. So when they do have power, it's like interesting to read versus like if it's a man who has the power in this relationship where he's like two women are like desperate for his love, he looks bad. Like because he's the one in the power in the relationship in that moment. It's because of like it's just basically about patriarchy.
Patriarchy, double standards. I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. My favorite, I don't know if this is a trope, but if that happens, the women end up becoming friends. That's my favorite thing to happen.
That's true. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Like, it's not interesting to watch a man like play two women because that's just like life, right? Like, so that's why like these love triangles are not fun if like it's a man with like who have two women pining after him, because I'm just like, this is just a stupid dude who can't make a decision because they're like, that's like that, because men always hold power in these relationships. Like, that's just, it's boring. That's not, the man's just a bad dude.
I'm trying to think of if this has ever happened.
I don't think there are a lot of books like this, but that's my point. Like, I think love triangles are always going to be women centered, and that's when they're okay.
That is so interesting.
Yeah, that's when we accept them. But if they were opposite, we wouldn't. Like, I don't think any book like that exists because we wouldn't accept it.
There are examples of it. I think you're right that there's probably just more examples of two men, one woman, but there are books about it.
Oh, are there really?
I haven't read them. There's apparently a Colleen Hoover book where that happens.
I'd never read it. Never. It's just not interesting to me.
I'm not against it, but I hear you though. That like typically that there is like the patriarchal lens there.
Yeah.
All right. Next trope. Fated love. And we put an example of ACOTAR. Was it with her Reese or her and Tamlin?
No, it's like the mates thing. Like,
oh, yeah.
that Rhysand is her mate. Like, I think it's just like you have no choice at that point. Although I think ACOTAR does play around with the idea that you could say no to that, but supposedly that's like with Elaine and Lucian. But the idea, it's like, this was your one true mate, as she would say.
The mate situation, which I didn't hate the concept of mate, but then it made the man possessive. That's what I hated. He suddenly like would grunt, and I'm like, okay,
growl.
We need to move on. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, that is. I don't like that either. The possessiveness. But that's a whole topic. Is like her depictions of men, like toxic masculinity, right?
That'll come up in our SJM discussion.
Indeed. Coming soon.
Hopefully. We just gotta reread those books or ask ChatGPT to summarize for us.
Indeed.
All right, next one. It's magic. There were a couple explanations for this that I saw, but the way that I interpreted it was that it's not necessarily explained, like the logic behind it. It's just magic, right? Like, it's just like it happened. And so that we've seen this before in token books. Like, there's obviously like the Gandalf could have taken the eagles to Mount Doom, like things could be explained. It's like loopholes, I think, that they just covered with that concept of magic.
Yeah, I think like the eagles are a common criticism in the Tolkien books. Yeah, I mean, you just have to have like a strong magic system. I do think, like, again, we love picking on ACOTAR. I think Nesta's powers are kind of, it's just magic. Like, she's like suddenly super overpowered, and like, do you remember she like saves Feyre at the end, like from her pregnancy? And I don't even know what she does. Something with like her eyes turn silver, and I'm like, where did this come from? I know she like went into the cauldron, but it's not really explained like why she has these powers. I guess
Yeah.
because she's like mean.
She was kind of the chosen one also. That she put
She
in that trope
was.
too. That was so yeah, I just felt like that was like, and now I'm super powerful.
Yeah, she was like crazy super powered. And it was like partially because like she's like mean. It really was partially because of her trauma that it made her that. I don't know. It was really strange. Strange
Yeah.
choice.
Odd. Love the
Yeah.
book, but yeah, odd decisions there with the magic.
Who knows? Who knows what was decided? Why that was made? That
No
decision.
editors. No editors.
None. Not a single one to be found.
All right. The One Flaw. So I took this as the Achilles heel. Like they're great, but they just have one flaw. And actually, do you want to talk about the example we have for this one?
Oh, we have Fourth Wing as our example here because Violet. Violet is able to do almost everything perfectly well. She's able to fight relatively well. She knows how to poison people immediately. She's able to cross the parapet. Has no issues, but her one flaw is her disability and her inability, like, which we've criticized the way that that was depicted. Again, we don't want to necessarily invalidate if that was representation for your like someone who experiences a disability. However, it was her quote unquote one flaw. I think that she was so small and frail, but like she could do everything else except be able to stay on a dragon essentially because she was so small and couldn't hold on. You know, like that, but it wasn't logical. I don't think it was logically done.
Yeah, there was like no explanation, at least so far, that we haven't seen. You know what I mean? That like,
Yeah.
why were you the chosen one? We're hoping. Again, we're gonna keep buying those books. We're gonna read. I think we'll just stay tuned.
Yeah. Prove us wrong, Rebecca Yaros. We keep saying that.
We're watching.
Yeah.
Reading. Listening.
We're reading everything. All the above.
On your Twitter. Sorry about that.
You did some major stalking, which was great. It was awesome.
I tried really hard to find a you gotcha. Like I just wanted to see if she was inspired by it, and it's clear without directly stating it. I think it's pretty clear.
It's very clear. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's okay.
All right. This next one, I just thought it was funny. I couldn't find many examples of this. I'm sure they exist, but technically not related. It's almost like a porno theme, but Samurai Turned Pretty, like I'm pretty sure they make fun of it in the show of like, it's funny because people might assume Belly's related to them or cousins with the two boys, but they're not related.
I thought they were when I first started. I was like, aren't they like cousins? But thank God they weren't.
Oh my gosh, that'd be such a different show.
It would be such a different show. It'd be so messed up. This trope is also the Shadowhunter series. They're not so the Shadowhunter series, it's like a popular YA series. You haven't read it. In the first like 2 or 3 books, there's like a love interest, Clary and Jace. And they actually they become like boyfriend girlfriend or something, and then they find out that he's actually her brother, her long lost brother. However, it ends up being not real. Like it's a long story. So that doesn't necessarily fall under this trope, but it was like that. This is kind of like a Luke and Leia trope, but opposite because they actually are not siblings in the end, even though they think that they are. Weird. Just felt like we should mention that here because I remember when I was reading that, I was like, what the F? They're siblings, but they're not.
What is this book? Yeah.
I was like, I'm reading incest. Thankfully not.
This is not the right trope.
No. Abort. But it worked out. Everything's fine. They're not siblings.
Good.
Yeah.
No incest tropes. Thank you. No more. We're done. No more. All right.
None of that. We're good.
This last one is interesting, which we've seen has grown in popularity and can be problematic. We'll talk about it, but dark romance. And when we try to look up a definition for it, we found it means darker themes and mature content. These stories often come with content warnings, and they have morally gray characters and plots riddled with trauma and violence. Not fun to read. Need a trigger warning for these books. The books we thought about were Haunting Adeline, A Touch of Darkness, and 50 Shades. I haven't read the previous two, the former, but I watched the 50 Shades movie, and I just remember when it came out, there was a lot of discussion about like, why are we glorifying like potentially abusive situations? So I think this can be problematic. How about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't like this trope. I avoid this entirely. I haven't read any of these books. I've seen the 50 Shades movie, and it does not interest me at all. Why would I want to be here? Again, if all of the point of this, of like reading for me is escapism, this is not escapism. This is not interesting at all. So no thanks.
Not for me, at least. Yeah, I can see like we don't want to kink shame, but also if it has abuse in it, that should not exist.
Yeah,
At all.
it's like just not okay if that's the point. Like that's not interesting. There's a difference between like telling stories that engage with these themes versus like glorifying the theme for the sake of like romance. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's bad. I don't think that's okay. It's totally cool to talk about these themes. That's life. But if it becomes like a gateway to, yeah, like, I don't know, glorifying it, that's not okay. I'm not cool with that.
That should be avoided. And I hope we've come forward in society and have been avoiding these, because I think some of these books, no, I know 2 of those books are recent. But
Haunting Adeline is really popular on TikTok, and I know nothing about it. But the fact that it showed up on this, like, as this list, like as a trope in this genre, I'm like, then this book is absolutely not for me. Even from the name, I'm like, nope. But yeah, not cool.
Interesting. I'm curious what it's about.
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out. I'm curious what the appeal is. We'll see. Yeah. So those are all the tropes. Olivia, do you think we should do an episode where we talk about our favorite tropes?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely.
I'll have to do some research, because sometimes it takes some introspection. Like, why do I like these books? I know they all have the same, like, general theme. General
and
trope.
they all have some reasons behind it, for sure. I mean, even just like our discussion on the like the love triangle trope, I think that it's like all of these have some like deeper meaning behind it as to like why we may or may not like it. That is reflective on society or reflective on like our personal experiences. So yeah, so I think it's interesting. Like, I think there's a reason why we like enemies to lovers, because all of us want to like we all want to be seen, I think, in that way, that somebody would grow to love us, you know, like we want that passion. It's more than just that. Whereas like friends to lovers is not always as interesting, because that's more like normal, where we want like the passion of like enemies to lovers, you know?
Yeah, you can, it's a personal reason for why you might like these books and these tropes, and why you might dislike certain tropes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to our episode of Fangirl Feels. We hope you liked our discussion about tropes we love to hate. Thank you again to the person who recommended this discussion topic. We loved it, and especially now that we're focusing on bookish topics, trying to avoid the movies and TV shows because of the actors and writers strike. We are trying to talk about books more often, which is fine, because we both consume books a lot often. I feel like we're both reading a book at any given point. Please let us know if there's topics that you think we should talk about. Like, what do you expect from us? What do you like? We just want to know. Again, I say this every episode, we love data, but we do when we don't get a lot of feedback when we ask specific questions on polls. So
yes, please tell us what else you'd like to hear. That'd be good. It would help us out a lot.
And someone please just leave a voice message. It's for free. Please, we're dying. We want to hear it.
Yeah, we're still waiting for that voice memo one day. And we're working on something we're hoping to share sometime soon. So stay tuned. Something exciting if you like books. So stay tuned for that.
Yes. Which reason you do. That's why you're here. And you made it this far. Woo!
We would hope so. If you made it this far and you don't really like books, good for you. I mean,
thank you. Wow.
Yeah, good for you.
That's all, folks. We'll see you next week.
Yes. Until then.
Bye.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.